The royal conversation right now feels different. There's a noticeable shift in tone, a quiet admission happening behind palace walls that many observers never thought they would hear. For years, certain voices insisted that Prince Harry no longer mattered to the monarchy, that once he stepped away, the institution would simply carry on unchanged. But recent insider commentary suggests something very different. It suggests that his absence has left a void that is becoming increasingly difficult to ignore. According to sources speaking to royal publications, Prince Harry is now being described as far more significant to the monarchy's long-term image than previously acknowledged. And this realization is not happening in a vacuum. It comes at a moment when the institution is under renewed global scrutiny, particularly due to lingering controversies involving senior figures whose actions continue to cast a long shadow. In that context, the idea that Harry once provided balance, warmth and relatability suddenly feels less like nostalgia and more like an uncomfortable truth. For a long time, critics framed Harry's departure as proof that he was expendable. The narrative was simple. The monarchy didn't need him, tradition would prevail, and any disruption caused by his exit would be temporary. Yet here we are, years later, with insiders openly acknowledging that something essential was lost when he stepped away. Not protocol, not ceremony, but something far more human. Several sources describe the current atmosphere within royal engagements as lacking lightness. That single word carries a lot of weight. Lightness doesn't mean triviality, it means approachability. It means emotional ease. It means moments that feel unscripted and genuine rather than rigid and overly managed. Harry brought that naturally. His humour, his spontaneity, and his ability to speak like a real person rather than a carefully polished institution made him stand out in ways that mattered. When Harry was front and centre, royal appearances often felt alive. He laughed easily. He reacted instinctively. He connected without needing a script. That kind of authenticity cannot be manufactured, and it certainly cannot be replaced by tighter choreography or more cautious messaging. Without that energy, the monarchy now risks appearing distant at a time when public connection is more important than ever. Beyond personality, insiders also point to Harry's unique ability to engage audiences who are indifferent to pomp and ceremony. Younger generations, in particular, are less impressed by hierarchy and more drawn to sincerity. They want leaders who sound human, who acknowledge complexity, and who understand the emotional realities of modern life. Harry consistently spoke to that audience in a language they understood. This is where Meghan's role becomes impossible to separate from the conversation. Together, Harry and Meghan represented a shift in how royal life could be communicated. Meghan brought a contemporary voice, an international perspective, and a willingness to challenge outdated norms. Harry stood beside her, not defensively, but openly, showing vulnerability and emotional honesty that resonated across cultures. For years, Meghan was painted as the disruptor. The narrative insisted that she introduced instability, that her presence unsettled the institution. But when we look at where the most damaging scandals have originated, that framing collapses. The most serious reputational harm facing the monarchy today has nothing to do with Harry and Meghan building independent lives. It stems from unresolved controversies involving senior figures who remained firmly within the traditional structure. There's a certain irony in watching the couple who stepped away for their well-being now being described as vital to the monarchy's relevance. The very qualities they were criticised for, openness, emotional intelligence, authenticity, are the same qualities insiders now admit are missing. If irony were currency, this would be a fortune. Harry's global popularity has not faded. While domestic approval ratings fluctuate, international audiences continue to respond strongly to his sincerity. Through public speaking, media projects, and advocacy work, Harry and Meghan have built a platform that feels real rather than rehearsed. That distinction matters in a world saturated with curated images and corporate messaging. When insiders describe Harry as essential to the monarchy's brand, they're essentially acknowledging that empathy, humour and relatability are not optional extras. They are survival tools. An institution that feels emotionally inaccessible risks becoming irrelevant, especially to younger generations who value connection over tradition. Harry offered relatability. Meghan offered boldness. Together they created a narrative that extended far beyond palace gates. Yet instead of embracing that momentum, parts of the institution chose to sideline it. Now, those same voices appear to be grappling with the consequences of that decision. The conversation has shifted from what was lost to what the future might require. Can the monarchy evolve without the very figures who pushed it toward modernization? That question is no longer hypothetical. It's being asked openly by royal watchers who sense stagnation where there was once energy. When Harry and Meghan stepped back, some commentators predicted a stronger, more unified monarchy. What we're seeing instead is a sense of caution, bordering on paralysis. Appearances feel tightly controlled, statements feel overly sanitized, and the spark that once drew people in feels diminished. Harry's interactions with the public were never just optics. He knelt to speak to children at eye level. He joked with veterans. He listened. Meghan did the same, whether discussing women's empowerment, mental health, or community initiatives. They spoke with people, not at them. That distinction may seem subtle, but it makes all the difference in an era defined by instant connection. Another factor insiders highlight is storytelling. Harry and Meghan embraced long-form conversations, documentaries, and candid interviews. Critics labelled this controversial, but supporters recognised it as honest. Either way, it kept audiences engaged in a way traditional palace messaging often struggles to achieve. Harry's openness about grief and mental health challenged the long-standing image of royals as emotionally distant figures. It allowed people to see themselves reflected in someone they were told to revere from afar. Meghan's willingness to discuss identity, resilience, and public scrutiny further humanized an institution long associated with perfection rather than complexity. Without that emotional bridge, the monarchy faces a delicate balancing act. Tradition must coexist with relevance. Hierarchy must adapt to cultural change, and that tension is becoming increasingly visible. Of course, not everyone agrees that Harry is essential. Some argue the institution has weathered greater storms, but history also shows that adaptability determines longevity. Institutions that fail to evolve eventually lose relevance, no matter how ancient their foundations. Harry and Meghan's influence extends far beyond the UK. Their work in the United States and their global advocacy have positioned them as cultural figures rather than just royal ones. That raises a crucial question. Is modern royal relevance more about global storytelling than ceremonial duty? If authenticity matters more than hierarchy to younger audiences, then Harry's approach looks less like rebellion and more like foresight. Insiders also describe the current royal atmosphere as overly cautious. Every move is calculated, every word weighed. While this may prevent short-term controversy, it creates emotional distance. Harry's unpredictability, by contrast, made the monarchy feel alive rather than preserved. Stepping away didn't diminish Harry and Meghan's influence. It gave them freedom to redefine service on their own terms. Their partnership feels collaborative, not hierarchical, resonating with modern values of equality and shared leadership. As debate continues about the monarchy's future, some analysts suggest it may need to broaden its definition of influence. Power no longer flows exclusively from palace walls. It flows through connection, narrative, and cultural relevance. For supporters around the world, this moment feels pivotal. Will the institution adapt, or will it cling to tradition at the expense of relevance? And where do Harry and Meghan fit into that evolving picture? What's undeniable is that the narrative around Harry has changed. Once dismissed as expendable, he is now being discussed as a missing piece. That shift says more about the changing world than about Harry himself. Audiences today want transparency, empathy, and humour. Harry and Meghan recognized that early. Their influence continues to shape conversations about what modern royalty should look like. And just as this realization gains traction, another major story unfolds. For the first time, Kensington Palace has issued a public statement addressing renewed scrutiny surrounding Prince Andrew's connections to Jeffrey Epstein. William and Catherine expressed concern and emphasized their focus on victims. The statement was careful, measured, and unmistakably cautious. The timing is telling. For an institution known for silence, speaking now signals mounting pressure. Andrew has already been stripped of royal roles, and the ongoing resurfacing of his associations continues to damage the monarchy's image. Supporters of Harry and Meghan view this as long overdue damage control. Silence is no longer an effective shield in the digital age. Every absence of commentary invites speculation. The contrast with Harry and Meghan is striking. When they spoke openly about mental health and institutional struggles, they were criticized for breaking tradition. Yet now, senior royals are doing exactly what was once deemed unacceptable. The most serious reputational threats facing the monarchy are not coming from California. They are coming from unresolved issues at the heart of the institution. Two royal narratives now run side by side. One looks forward, focused on connection and global impact. The other reacts defensively to scandals that refuse to disappear. Public opinion is divided. Some see William and Catherine's statement as responsible leadership. Others see inconsistency in how accountability is applied. What's clear is that the old royal playbook no longer works. Silence is no longer strength. Distance no longer equals dignity. Modern audiences expect clarity and emotional intelligence. The shift in palace messaging reflects that reality, whether acknowledged or not. In many ways, this evolution mirrors the path Harry and Meghan walked years ago. Change arrives gradually, often after resistance fades. As headlines continue, the larger questions remain. What does accountability look like in a modern monarchy? How should power be communicated in an age of transparency? And how much of this shift traces back to the example Harry and Meghan set? Because whether critics like it or not, their influence persists. They spark conversations the monarchy can no longer avoid. And that, perhaps, is their most lasting legacy.